This is GM Word of the Week, and I'm Fiddleback. The Lost Episode 2. We take a lot of pride in our work here at Word of the Week Plaza. And one of the things we greatly pride ourselves on is not our extensive to the point of obsessive research or our high production values. No, we pride ourselves on brevity. Now, you might find that a pretty funny claim, given our sesquipedalian loquaciousness and our talent for saying in 50 words what others could say in 5. But hear us out. In this era, where a 1-hour podcast is considered short, and most podcasts go on for the length of an animated movie about a cartoon fish with a memory disorder, we work very hard to keep the Word of the Week to a bite-sized portion of digressional goodness. We keep our scripts down below 3,000 words, and our runtime to about 20 minutes and change. And that means we need to sometimes make some brutal cuts of otherwise interesting information. Now, if you're in the United States of America, chances are good that you just got done celebrating an ancient harvest festival by gorging yourself on turkey or ham or tofurkey or turducken. Not to mention 1,000 starchy side dishes. And, as is tradition in the United States, that means you're ready for leftovers. Nice, bite-sized leftover morsels. Yes, we're doing another Lost episode in which we compile some of the bits and pieces we've had to trim from previous scripts to keep the portion size under control. So have fun picking at our leftovers while we go sleep off our own overindulgence. And since tradition states that it's okay to start hanging up the Christmas decorations once Thanksgiving is over, let's start by talking about pretty glowing lights, like bioluminescence. In our Speleothem episode, we briefly mentioned the Waitomo glowworm caves of New Zealand. Visitors to this natural attraction can take a boat ride to the underground Waitomo River, which flows straight through Glowworm Grotto. And there, visitors can gaze upward at a veritable cosmos of pale blue living lights clinging to the ceiling, the light of thousands of glowworms. And the glowworms glow through the magic of bioluminescence. Bioluminescence is an easy word to parse. The prefix bio tells us it has to do with living things like biology and biosphere. Luminescence is the process of giving off light, which is why we say glowing things are luminous, and measure light in lumens, and why the spell Harry Potter utters to produce light is lumos. But the process by which it happens is quite complex. Glowworms, which are actually the larvae of a short-lived flying insect that feeds on plant roots and fungi called fungus gnats. Glowworms produce their glow in the same way as fireflies and certain types of snails. It involves a chemical called luciferin. And if you remember back to our episode about the morning star, you might recall that the word Lucifer means light bringer. Luciferin is actually a generic name for a bunch of different proteins that share one thing in common. They can be excited to a higher energy state through certain chemical processes. And when they calm down, they bleed off that extra energy in the form of light. The chemical that excites luciferin is called luciferase. And we only mention that so that we can mention the naming convention in biology. See, there is a certain type of complex organic molecule called an enzyme. Enzymes are things that make chemical reactions happen in the body, and they are always named for the thing they react with, along with the ending ASE, ACE. So lactose is a milk sugar, and the enzyme that helps you break down milk sugar is called lactase. And luciferin is a light-producing molecule, and the enzyme that makes it all excited so that it produces light is called luciferase. But we digress. Many animals produce their own forms of luciferin, and thus they can control their glow. They can turn it on and off. But some animals that seem to be bioluminescent actually aren't. Not by themselves. Some types of bioluminescent marine animals, like squid and certain types of fish, owe their glows to colonies of bacteria living in their skin or in specialized body tissue. And some types of glowing shrimp actually get their glow from the food they eat. See, there are these tiny aquatic plants that drift through the water called dinoflagellates, and big colonies of them can cause beautiful glowing waves. You can see pictures on the internet just by searching for the term glowing wave. And when shrimp eat these little guys, they can pick up the glow. Speaking of fantastic light displays in nature, let's talk about ball lightning. We were deeply saddened when we had to cut a digression about this mysterious, eerie phenomenon from the episode Ignis Fatuus, because it has been a favorite topic of ours for many years. Ball lightning is basically a glowing ball of floating something that very, very rarely forms during thunderstorms. It can range from a few inches to several feet across, and it has been said to last anywhere from a few seconds to a few minutes. When it manifests, it tends to float in the air above the ground. And that's about all anyone has been able to agree upon. Eyewitness accounts, and there have been many accounts of ball lightning over many long centuries from every corner of the globe. Eyewitness accounts vary. Some people say it avoids buildings and people. Others say it chases people who run from it. Some say it can drift through doors, glass windows, or even thin walls. Some claim that it starts fires. And a few spectacular claims say ball lightning can explode. Because it is so remarkably rare, and because the eyewitness accounts are so varied, scientists dismissed it as an urban myth until as late as the 1970s. But then, video evidence started to surface, and laboratory experiments began to demonstrate possible explanations for the phenomenon. Many explanations were proposed. The most prominent were that lightning strikes could produce balls of superheated air called plasma that gradually dispersed, and that lightning strikes were hot enough to vaporize soil, turning earth and rock into a glowing, superheated cloud of gas. Then, in 2012, a group of Chinese weather scientists got extremely lucky. While they were performing an experiment to take spectroscopic measurements of lightning during a storm, a manifestation of ball lightning happened to form basically in front of their scientific instruments. Spectroscopy is a method of measuring the chemical makeup of something by analyzing the light it emits. Every element on Earth has a sort of luminous fingerprint. Each element can only emit certain combinations of very specific colors of light when heated. And thus, the scientists were able to determine that the ball of lightning they saw contained silicon, calcium, and other chemicals one would expect in soil. Thus, they concluded that this example of ball lightning was indeed a ball of vaporized dirt and rock. But they were also quick to point out that this is just one example, and ball lightning might actually be a combination of several different phenomena, so the results are hardly an explanation for all ball lightning. That said, it does prove conclusively that lightning can vaporize soil and produce balls of floating, glowing gas. But in Ignis Fatuus, we also mentioned a European legend that certainly deserves a little more attention. The legend of Stingy Jack. Stingy Jack comes from a bit of Irish folklore. The story goes that there was a particularly stingy man named Jack. Thus, the people nicknamed him Stingy Jack in a fit of creativity. One night, Jack was out drinking in the local pub, when who should show up but the devil? And Stingy Jack recognizes Old Scratch and invites the devil to share a drink with him. When the night ends, Stingy Jack, being stingy, doesn't want to pay for the drinks. So, he offers up his soul if the devil will pay for the drinks. The devil can't pass up a soul, and so the devil turns into a silver coin. But rather than pay for the drinks with the coin, Stingy Jack immediately takes the coin and shoves it into his pocket next to a silver cross he just happens to have with him. Because of the cross, the devil can't turn back into the devil. and so he cuts a deal with Jack. First, the devil has to not bother Jack for an entire year. And second, if Jack ever dies, the devil can't claim his soul. The devil agrees. So a year goes by, and the devil is fuming about that stingy Jack. And once the year is up, the devil goes out and finds stingy Jack for a little revenge. And somehow, stingy Jack gets him to climb a tree to get a piece of fruit. But before the devil can hop back down, Jack carves a cross at the base of the tree. And now the devil is stuck in the tree, and thus Jack bought another 10 years of devil-free life. And then Jack died. The problem was that Jack was kind of a jerk. People don't nickname you Stingy Jack unless you're kind of a jerk. And when Jack got to heaven, he found that he wasn't worthy of admittance. And so he was sent to hell instead. But when he got to hell, he discovered the devil couldn't take him in because of the deal he'd cut years before about the devil never claiming his soul. As a parting gift, the gloating devil handed Jack a single burning coal from the fires of hell, so that he would have a light with him as he wandered the world as a shade. Jack needed a lantern to hold the coal, so he hollowed out a turnip. And thus, he became known as Jack of the Lantern, or Jack-o'-lantern. From then on, it became a tradition in Ireland and Scotland to carve turnips, potatoes, or beets into scary faces and put candles inside on Halloween to frighten off stingy Jack and other evil spirits. And when immigrants came across the Atlantic, they discovered the North American native gourd, the pumpkin. And it was just perfect for making jack-o'-lanterns. Speaking of tricky spirits and phantasms, do you remember our episode about mysterious natural illusions and mirages which we called Fata Morgana? We're sure you do. In it, we talked a lot about deserts. But one subject we didn't have time to touch on was also one which a lot of gamers would probably find useful. It was the subject of desert survival. Specifically, how to find water in the desert. See, hot and dry deserts receive almost no precipitation. And so people stuck in the desert tend to dehydrate quickly, especially because they can't escape the sun. On average, a healthy person needs about 64 ounces of fluid a day to replace the water they lose by sweating, urinating, and exhaling moisture. This has been perverted into the health myth that you need to drink 8 glasses of water every day. But that myth is just that, a myth. See, that doesn't take into account the fact that you absorb some moisture from your environment when you breathe, and also that everything you eat and drink contains water. And extensive research has shown that the claim that certain beverages, like coffee, dehydrate you is also not true. Forcing yourself to drink 8 glasses of water a day, even if you aren't thirsty, can actually be dangerous. Overhydration can actually dissolve important vitamins, and it can overwhelm your kidneys and urinary tract. That is why most reputable doctors and nutritionists recommend something that sounds positively crazy. Drink water when you're thirsty. But we digress. In a desert, things are a little different. The problem is that the heat keeps you sweaty, and the dry air can absorb a lot of humidity, so you tend to lose a huge amount of water by sweating. And even in cold deserts, you can quickly dehydrate because the dry air tends to absorb more moisture from your respiratory tissue, and thus you exhale a lot more water in the form of water vapor. Thus, you can lose over 128 ounces of water every day. A full gallon of water. Sometimes even more. And with no precipitation, there's almost no water to find in the environment. While the human body can survive a few weeks without food, you can only survive for a few days without adequate water. So when adventurers are stuck in the desert, what exactly can the ranger do to find water? Well, there's a few things. First of all, there is water in the desert. It's rare, but it's there. Small pools of standing water tend to collect where the ground is rocky, and if the area is shaded, the water is less likely to evaporate. Thus, if you can find rocky canyons or valleys, you might find small pools of water. And an observant ranger might even be able to enlist the local wildlife to help find such a pool. See, birds, insects, and other wildlife need water to survive. So if you can see birds in the sky, or even find mosquitoes or flies, they can lead you to water. If a mosquito bites you in the desert, don't kill that blood-sucking sucker. Follow it. It knows where the water is. Likewise, plants can't grow without water. Sure, cacti can survive on very little water, but other plants grow in the desert too. And as a general rule, the greener the plant, the more water it needs. Broadleaf plants are the best sign of all. If you see green, follow it. But sometimes, there's just no surface water to find. And that's when you have to rely on water lurking just under the surface. Groundwater tends to collect where drainage is poorest, and that means wherever you see rocky outcroppings or changes in the landscape, there's a chance that some groundwater has collected. But if there are no cliffs or outcroppings, you'll need to again look for clumps of vegetation. If there's no vegetation, just head for the lowest spot in the landscape. It's the best you can do. Once you find a location where you might find some groundwater, wait until the coolest part of the day you can, and then dig a small hole. Dig down about a foot, and then expand the hole until it's about a foot in diameter. Water might start to collect immediately, but often it won't. However, after several hours, if there is groundwater to be had, it will collect in your hole. Soak that water up with a cloth and wring it into a container. And work fast. Water evaporates quickly in the desert. If you're getting desperate and those methods aren't paying off, you might have to resort to whatever few drops you can find. Dew tends to collect on vegetation just before dawn. If you pass an absorbent cloth or even a clump of dried grasses over the needles of a cactus, you can collect all the little beads of dew. It isn't much, but it could save your life. It should also be noted that cactus fruit, like prickly pears, are safe to eat and contain moisture that can help save your life. It's best if you can roast them over a fire for a few minutes to burn off the spines and hairs, but don't roast them too long or you'll drive off the moisture. The problem is, some cacti are poisonous. The barrel cactus of North America is a stumpy barrel-shaped cactus that's a bit like a pulpy white watermelon inside. But the water inside is usually poisonous. And even if you stumble upon one of the safe varieties of barrel cactus, the water still contains high concentrations of oxalic acid, which can cause kidney failure. Speaking of kidney failure, we just know someone is thinking it, so we have to answer the question. Yes, it is possible to survive by drinking your own urine. We're sorry if this squicks you out. Sometimes our thoroughness is an absolute curse. But here's the thing. By drinking your urine, you are recapturing some of your lost water. But your body also uses your urine to rid itself of metabolic wastes, and those are toxic in high concentrations. So, as you keep drinking your urine and keep taking in the same metabolic toxins over and over, they tend to concentrate more and more in your urine as your body keeps filtering them out. That means that after a day or two, your urine has very little water and it has a high concentration of toxic substances. So it's not a long-term strategy. At best, experts suggest it'll buy you a day or two. But some disaster survivors have survived for longer drinking their own waste. Aaron Ralston survived in the Utah desert for several days on his own waste. But he was pretty desperate, considering he also had to amputate his own arm after he got trapped under a boulder. A Chinese man survived for 6 days after he was buried alive under rubble by an earthquake in May of 2008, partly by drinking his own urine. So again, it was an act of desperation, not a primary survival plan. Most experts agree that drinking your urine should be a last resort, and when you have to resort to it, you're probably as good as dead anyway. And on that delightful note, we're going to end our post-Thanksgiving meal of leftovers. If you celebrate the holiday, happy Thanksgiving. If you don't, happy Friday. And thank you for listening and for helping make the GM Word of the Week such a great success. And we're really sorry about that urine thing. This has been the GM Word of the Week. It was written by the Angry GM and recorded and produced by me, Fiddleback. You can find more at theangrygm.com and madadventurers.com.